every year on my birthday or around my birthday, I do something I've never done before. I realized I was afraid of some things and I wanted to face my fears. And it's grown from facing things I was afraid of to just this open, creative approach of like, what is it that I've not even considered trying yet? We went on a hot air balloon safari in Kenya a few years ago. I took an intensive class on wilderness survival and learned how to make a fire in the cold without anything but some sticks and some rocks. I've jumped out of airplanes and done all kinds of things. What's really beautiful about this kind of, invitation to try something new is that it can be anything for anyone. It's kind of a way to encourage people to be out.
Hello and welcome to Along the Way Life's Journey. I'm your host, Carl Buccellato. I am this person who's traveled all around the world, millions of miles, meeting all kinds of people, and I have the advantage of having a very good business life. But this world today has changed dramatically. More and more business is being done online. Commerce is exploding online. More and more people are getting their information and their news direct from podcasters and people who blog on a day-to-day basis. That's been proven in the last election. So much impact has happened. But that's not easy to do. It takes expert advice to do it correctly. And we have with us, we're very fortunate, we have with us today AJ Davis, who is an absolute expert on these things. And she's here to enlighten us on the power of great website research and this little thing called CRO. That's very technical sounding, but it really means conversion rate optimism. And how do you get into understanding consumer behavior? Very technical stuff, but she's going to make it easy. Welcome, AJ Davis. AJ, thank you so much for joining us.
Hey, great to be here. I always like to say that CRO or conversion rate optimization sounds so technical to your point. And for years, I tried to get away from it, but it is what people search for when they are really looking for that specific thing. But what we're doing is we're just helping people who are out looking for something to understand. They visit a website, they understand what it is you offer, and then we help them figure out how to be a customer. So it's pretty easy at the face value, and then there's lots of technical stuff behind the scenes.
Yes, and you've been doing it for quite some time. You look like you're a very young woman, but here, I'm looking at your credentials here, and you have an experience range that's magnificent. You've been involved with all the providing strategy for multiple Fortune 500 companies. You work diligently with the group at Google to Google Optimize to get their program running correctly. That's quite an achievement. And you're an alumni from Wellesley College, and you have your Master's in Human Factors and Information Design from Bentley University. Marvelous credentials. I'm proud of you. I just
Thank you.
I'm proud of you.
It's flattering having you read it out loud to me.
Well, it's amazing.
It's true, but I mean, it's nice. It's kind of a fun mirror to have someone else kind of take a fresh look at your path and give that feedback. So thank you.
I believe, that we can be people who are modest and we say, oh, that's, but I don't go. But you should recognize and give credit to what you've accomplished. This is a marvelous accomplishment, not only in your academic pursuit and accomplishment, but in what you've accomplished commercially. You've done so much for so many companies. And ladies and gentlemen, she's a host of a podcast. It's a very successful host of a podcast, not like mine. I'm just a hack. I just decided to start this podcast because I wrote a book. It became an Amazon bestseller, and my publicist said, you're pretty glib on TV. Why don't you do a podcast? And I said, what's a podcast? I didn't know what it was. But this lady knows the nuances of what it means to be on the internet and do it successfully. So what are some of the things you do when you help young companies or companies that are not so young and looking to grow their marketplace and develop higher revenue sources, but more importantly than that, satisfied consumers? So tell us part of what you do. How do you get in there and analyze what they do and tell them, this is something you're going to change? It
starts with kind of what might seem obvious, but like being a pair of fresh eyes for them. So sometimes, or almost every time, when we work on a project or a podcast or a website, we get so close to it that we kind of miss things that are glaringly missing or confusing about it. So the first thing we do is just kind of give it that fresh perspective and, eye on what's going on there. But we do also have like these, techniques for analyzing what we call an expert review, where we take our experience and best practices and, try to identify what's happening now and what could be done instead. So we go through this initial phase of discovery and looking for opportunities. The part that's really exciting for me is to test out whether those things we discovered, if the solutions that we put in place to help with that, whether they work or not. So we call that A/B testing, or it's a split test where we'll try one thing and compare it against the other thing at the same time to hack the people to the website. And then we measure it and we can make data-driven decisions about what's really working for people. So one of my favorite things is being wrong on an idea and figuring out why I was wrong. And that's where a lot of really good learning comes from.
Isn't it, from our mistakes, right?
Yeah. And I actually don't even think of it as a mistake. I think of it as a strong hypothesis that was disproven. And why didn't it work? Let's go investigate. So to me, it's like becomes this mystery to go investigate and solve.
Somebody told me a long time ago, no one can edit their own work. They can't edit their own writings and so forth. And this is true in what you're talking about as well. Anyone who creates a podcast or does a blog or tries to reach the world at large without getting another set of eyes, as you're saying, something who can be more critical and recognize the mistakes that you take for granted. I make mistakes all the time. And my producer and my friends and my wife said, you did this, you should have tried that. But you have expert reason to those things rather than impulse. And that's important. So tell us, if I were to come to you and I said, okay, I have this podcast and I'm doing it for a couple of years and I'm not satisfied with my reach in the marketplace, or I think I have something to say and I'm not delivering it correctly, how would you go about correcting or examining so that you'd be able to give me advice?
I mean, I think besides sort of like the expert review of like, hey, I've been trying this thing myself and here's some things that have worked. My background, kind of, you mentioned it earlier, is in human factors, which that's the academic description of what is commonly called user experience or user experience research. So one of my favorite things to do, if someone really is interested in getting into why something's not working, is to help them construct user research that will get them to the answer of whatever's causing the issue. So maybe for a podcast, maybe we're not sure who the audience is, and we need to do some discovery and interviews to understand who it is that's listening and why they're listening and what's resonating with them. Or maybe there's a target audience that we want to reach, but why is it not working? So we'll do things like surveys and interviews. There's a whole bunch of different techniques and methods to get to the bottom of it. But really, we always start with what is the goal? And then what is our kind of hypothesis statement or research question to go sort out and validate in the market?
And I'm sure you have all kinds of online tools to analyze the nanoseconds of what's going on and how the reach is going and what markets it's reaching and what demographic it's touching and so forth. It's got to be exciting to be able to drive all those drivers.
I love that combination of the two, actually. So it's like, we now live in a world where with the internet and all of those things you're talking about with like the tracking and the analytics and all this stuff, you can get really, really rich data. But to me, it's that intersection between the hard data or the quantitative data and then the qualitative. So like being able to talk to people and read between the lines and really understand some of the pain points they have, and then finding that intersection to say, this is enough people having this problem and the solution is strong enough that we can see it when we measure it in the real world.
I understand some of that. You're talking to an old dinosaur here, because in the old days, I was in the marketing business and I was pretty good at it. But back in the 70s and 80s, long before you were born, we used to do things like that to find out what the reactions would be. And we called them focal groups. Focus groups. We bring people together, and you are doing it technologically, with the same kind of
it's the
approach.
same. Yeah. What we do now is just kind of an evolution of what that work was. And focus groups, we now mostly do them one-on-one and in smaller kind of settings to reduce some bias that can show up in a group. But it's the same idea. Like, let's talk to people and understand their reactions to things and watch them use technology and then learn from that.
And hopefully learn something before we spend the whole budget the wrong way. Okay, so AJ, tell us a little something about yourself, if you would, because this is a show that reaches many people, and it's got a philosophy of understanding that we all have our own story, and our story, even though it's unique to us, has a way of overlapping and touching other people in humanity. And hopefully giving them a little strength to go forward, or maybe modify something that they do and change their lives a bit. So tell us a little bit about you. Tell us your background, where you grew up, and all those kind of things.
Yeah. Well, I'm happy to tell you that. I grew up in the Midwest, so I'm from the east side of Cleveland. I'm the oldest of three. I have a sister who's 2 years younger than me and a brother who's 13 years younger than me. So I think kind of an interesting thing about our family is that we were a foster family growing up. So we had kids in our house, and my parents really did a lot of acts of service to make sure other people had a good start. And I was I was old enough to kind of witness that and see that and have that impact how I thought about the world. And my brother is a product of that work my parents did in service, and just a really powerful experience, I think, growing up to see some rough things, but also some beauty that comes out of taking care of people that need it.
And did any of those experiences have an opportunity? Sometimes, we do these things and we think we're helping other people. And in their despair, they do something and we see it and it helps us. It's kind of a ricochet type thing. Have you had any such experiences?
I think probably. I think what's coming to mind for me was it's more of like the seeing finding something that kind of like the analogy I think of is like you have a rock and you can shine it. So it's like a really hard situation. It's really sad, but then these beautiful moments can come out of it. And just seeing we've kept in touch with some of the kids that lived with us, and seeing them flourish and kind of become their own people despite their hardship, I think is just a really beautiful and inspiring thing. And I think it also just kind of makes me appreciate, the default stance I showed up to in the world. I was very lucky to have both my parents and family close by. And I think that's kind of how I can build this entrepreneurial journey, is because I have this very solid foundation to lean on or to come out of. So I think kind of seeing that and knowing I can depend on that. It's been a huge part of why I can do what I do now.
That's a great observation, because I think we have to recognize that. Let's face it, we live in the United States. We won the gene pool. When you think about what we have and what the rest of the world has, it's such a great opportunity to have been born here. But then to complement that with having the type of parents that you just described, who outreach people who went beyond themselves, could have been just as happy just taking care of the children, or their own children, but they opened their hearts and their home to other people. And then you learn from that. And that's a foundation that is so wonderful,
I think to your point too, I think there's this sense of globalness that shows up in my life that I hope I would love to lean into a little bit because of what you just said there of
Please do.
All people having value and wanting to see everyone's lives improve and the waters race for everyone.
That's right.
I think it's something that we sometimes lose track of when we think about our tribe or about our city. And there's something kind of beautiful about opening it up and seeing. I think you said earlier, you do a lot of travel. And I think that's something that travel can open up for people, but other life experiences too, of just, looking to see how you can, appreciate where you are in the world, but also how it's all interconnected.
That's right. So much so. One thing I learned a long time ago as a very young man, in the foxhole, when somebody needs blood, they never ask where did it come from. Because it's the same blood for all of us, wherever we are, wherever we've come from, whatever language we speak, whatever color skin we have. It's the same blood. It keeps this mankind pumping and alive. We have to be thankful for that. So I'm getting a little off on things over here. I apologize for that.
No, I love it. I think you let me know that sometimes these conversations go in all directions. So open to wherever this goes.
They do. And it's a remarkable thing, because there's on March 21st, the world will be celebrating World Down Syndrome Day. We will be celebrating young people and not so young people who for a long time were discarded as not meaningful. And yet they can make such tremendous contributions to this world.
Yeah.
And there's a man that was on my show not too long ago. He and his son, who was a Down syndrome individual, and they have done remarkable things. This young boy has been the greeter for multiple professional sports teams. And as such, he's been greeted by people all over the world. And as such, many parents came forward and said, how can you help me help my child? And they created this program called Angels for Hire. And they have 90 kids all over the United States doing these things. But that's that's what happens when we come out of ourselves and we throw a pedal in a stagnant pond. You never know where the rings are going to go. You never know what's going to happen. And when you do your work, you're evaluating human behavior, consumer behavior, but that's human behavior. And when you reach some of these people and you help them improve their product with a sensitivity that the client on the other end is more than a check. It's a human being.
Yeah. And it's a relationship you're growing in it. There's businesses exist in theory to solve problems that people have, and people are willing to pay for those problems to solve. So it's connecting the dots.
That's what commerce is. But if we can solve their problem and improve their lives in some way, how wonderful is that? That's fantastic. And you're doing it. You're out there. You're teaching people how to do that over and over again. Yeah. You have a podcast. It's called Experiment Zone. And you bring people on your podcast and you help them analyze what they're doing. Tell us a little bit about that.
Yeah. It's one of our new projects. We started it a little over a year and a half ago. And what I love to do on it is we have conversations like this to talk about the business and what problem they're trying to solve for their customer and who those customers are. And then we do a live audit and review. So that's where I hope to kind of show what it is that we do, but also give value to them for being on. And then our listeners get to see a demonstration of, oh, here's a website. Here's how some things I might need to think about for my own, for connecting or having a good message with my customer. So it's a pretty short form, 25-minute podcast episode. But I really enjoy it. It's a great way to get to know people. And
isn't that wonderful?
Yeah.
Isn't it wonderful? I love doing this, because I meet people like you of all walks of life, and it's just enriches me so much. And I hope it does you as well, because how else are you going to meet people like this in different places in the world? It's just great. When you're in your local community, you meet people, you make friends. Okay, that's great, but it's limited to your local community. Yeah, the community is as big as the world. You can reach out to anybody. And
podcasts are wonderful too, because I think there's this common thread of people who are willing to be on a podcast or host a podcast where they just want to share and talk and communicate and share ideas and have a good conversation. And you don't always get that when you go to like a networking event in person or something. You don't always know what that person's kind of goals are, or maybe they're kind of awkward about it. Yeah. But there's something kind of beautiful about just hopping on and then letting other people listen in.
And there's freedom to it. Somehow I find that very thing, you meet some people in some environments, they're a little concerned, or they don't know how to public speak, or they're cautious. And then you put them on a TV screen, like a computer screen, and millions of people around the world are seeing them, and they're relaxed. And they and they just let loose and they chat. It's really, I think it's marvelous. I really do. Ladies and gentlemen, before I go any further, I'm remiss here. I have to tell you, in the show notes, you're going to find everywhere where you can contact AJ and talk about her business and what your needs are. You'll know how to contact her, reach her website. You'll know how to reach out to her for her services, how to reach her podcast. It'll all be there. Don't bother taking notes now. It'll be in the show notes. Just click on, you'll go right through to her. And I'm sure she'd be more than happy to chat with anybody. And hopefully that's what this is about. People recognizing.
Actually, an offer I love to make is I had this beautiful moment in my career where I graduated from undergrad and I went to work, and what the work wasn't what I liked. I picked the wrong thing. It wasn't the right thing for me. And I wasn't sure how to navigate that. This might be something people can relate to, because you think this is the career I've always wanted, and this isn't it. What's showing up and what my day-to-day looks like isn't what I had. What is satisfying for me. And what I ended up doing was having 100 coffees with people, like 100 different people. And each one I would have a coffee and I would say, who do you think I should talk to next? And I would just pick their brain. I would say, like, what is it that you do? Why do you do it? What do you love about it? And just have a great, 20-minute chat with them. And the offer I want to make to your audience and to anyone listening is, I want to do that. I'm trying to return that favor. So I'm hoping that people reach out, whether they want to do business together, whether they're just looking for some inspiration or someone to talk with, or maybe they're trying to get their own podcast off the ground and want to have me on. So just an open offer to reach out and do a virtual coffee.
That's great. I take espresso, by the way, when we chat.
I had a couple
cream
this morning. That's my preference as well.
I can't get through the day without espresso. I must say that. I really can't. I love it. As I said when we were chatting before the show, I'm Sicilian American, which means I was raised on espresso. It's part of my life. Okay. So what do you do for fun these days? I understand that there's this thing called, let me see, what is it? Cucumber tennis. Oh, well, that's not right. It's called something else. You're a pickleball lover, right?
I am.
That's what I hear. And
yes,
how good are you at it?
Oh gosh, it's been about 4 years. 5 years. Nope, 4 years. It was the year after COVID that I started. When speaking about community, it's been just this amazing way to show up. I live here in Austin, Texas, and I have met thousands, not even hundreds, thousands of people through this sport. And it is so fun to just like walk onto courts around town and know a bunch of people and have community that way. I also started running pickleball events, and we are launching a pickleball vacation brand. So in addition to having a day job in tech, I have kind of picked up some entrepreneurial pieces in the pickleball scene as well.
And so you're doing pickleball vacations. So you're going to be booking groups of people to meet in a vacation spot or travel to different spots and have pickleball games or tournaments wherever you go. So am I going to be getting an invitation to a pickleball cruise someday and go on the cruise ship? And
they do exist. We don't have, that's not in our game plan quite yet, but they are out there. I've always thought cruises would be awfully windy for playing pickleball, but I've heard people have a good time doing it anyways.
That's amazing. They play basketball on ships and things like that. And so why not pickleball? My wife and I like to cruise on Celebrity Line. And on Celebrity Line on the top deck, they have a grass field, natural grass. Oh. So you can go play up there. We play bocce up there and things like that. And they have a glass blower that goes in there, a big furnace. So, you do all kinds of things under the stars on a grass field, on a cruise ship. In the middle of the ocean. So anything is possible. Anything is possible. So any events coming up that you'd like to tell people about, or anything that...
I would love to kind of announce that I have a book coming out in May.
Oh, of course.
So it's a little different. It's not pickleball and it's not conversion optimization. But you were mentioning sort of, these annual days of recognition. So there's an event that I'm involved in called World Usability Day, which is the act or the goal of making everything usable for everyone in the world. So it's related to my field, and my grad advisor and I have co-edited a book that will be coming out in May, and it's called Usability for the World, Designing Better Cities and Communities. So it is the opportunity to kind of share knowledge. We brought people together from across the world to write different chapters about their experiences in building better cities and communities.
Oh, wonderful. That's like recycling on steroids. That's fantastic. That's a wonderful thing. If you have a copy of the cover of the rendition of it, make sure you get it to us. The producer will put it on the screen. And
great. Yeah, we'll send a link. There's a link available now. So it was a really wonderful project that I worked on like this last year. My first involvement beyond kind of case study contributions in a book. And I know you spoke earlier that you have written a book, so I haven't gotten that far yet, but it was such a cool learning experience, and really just kind of like the way that the podcast brings people together. I got to meet some really amazing writers, and then get to edit their work, which, itself is its own journey. So it was a lot of fun.
This is my book, and this is the sponsor of this show, because I wrote this book when I retired at age 78, 5 years ago. And this is the result of 50 years worth of journaling, which means that it included meetings with people around the world and events that were alive and real the moment they happened. And I wrote them down then, so that when I put this book together, all the emotions were real, like they were the same day it happened. And the book has gone on to become an Amazon bestseller, and it's in its third printing. So I encourage you folks, buy my book and buy her book. My book is the one that sponsors this show. Nobody else sponsors the show but this book. So in a way, you're sponsoring the show, folks. You bought the book, you sponsor the show. So I'm so happy to hear that. And please let us know when it comes out. So we'll give it a further plug. And I'm sure it'll be on Amazon and everywhere else. And do a book tour and do all that stuff. That's good. The wonderful thing about doing these books is as you said, you meet people that expand your horizons. And they you have a chance for dialogue with them. But beyond that, when people read your book and they read about that person, they come back to you because you wrote the book and you have the chance for more dialogue. It's a nice life. It's really a good life.
It's so interesting too, because I think you get this idea that writing a book or editing a book is kind of like sitting at your computer and typing away and long days of writing and doing that. And it turned out that a lot of the time, obviously there was time editing and sitting at the computer, but there was actually a lot more time in that relationship side of getting to know people and talking about their work and talking about how it would all come together. And that part is just so enjoyable. It surprised me how much I enjoyed that part.
That's kind of an extension of what we do here. And I know you have experienced it as a podcast host also. You meet people and it expands us. It really, that's the only word I can use. We grow from meeting other people and hearing about their experiences. So, we're coming close to a half-hour point now, and we usually shoot up to a half hour, and then we'll overlay some pictures that you'll contribute to us about your show and your book here to link to your show. But is there anything that you'd like to say to the folks out there before we close down? I'll give you a free run, whatever you'd like to say.
Final piece of life advice.
Yeah.
I do this thing every year, and I have found that when I share it with people, sometimes it inspires them. So I'll share that here. It's not business related. It's just a personal growth thing. But every year on my birthday or around my birthday, I do something I've never done before. And the reason I started it when I was 16 was I realized I was afraid of some things and I wanted to face my fears. And it's grown from facing things I was afraid of to just this open, creative approach of like, what is it that I've not even considered trying yet? And it's taken me, we went on a hot air balloon safari in Kenya a few years ago. I took an intensive class on wilderness survival and learned how to make a fire in the cold without anything but some sticks and some rocks. So it's really kind of taken me all over. I've jumped out of airplanes and done all kinds of things. So
here you are. Look at this. Is wonderful. You and I have a lot in common. I think I did all that stuff. Go ahead. That's wonderful.
But the advice, I think, is what's really beautiful about this kind of, invitation to try something new is that it can be anything for anyone. It could be a cooking class. It could be phoning someone you haven't talked to before. There's going to play your first pickleball game. And there's just something really beautiful about the human experience of celebrating by doing something new instead of saying, oh, I'm just getting a year older or I don't really want to be older. It becomes a compilation of all the things that you've tried out and experienced and then the people along the way.
How rewarding. That's one. That's I keep saying on steroids, I shouldn't use that expression, but that's like a bucket list with a greater vision to it, because you actually get it done, you actually get it done.
A little more manageable when it's one thing a year instead of a big daunting list of the bucket list. But I am looking for inspiration. I have kind of run towards the end of the list that was written down. So if you have any ideas or if your listeners have any ideas, that would be a wonderful thing to send to me.
I'm challenging you folks. She's opened the book here now. She says, give me ideas. So send in ideas. Tell them the things that you've done that have been inspirational or expanding or fun or just mellow you out for a moment or two so you can think in a different place than you've been before. They're all great things. I'll just repeat to you one person that I met on this show about a year and a half ago. Very successful executive out of Chicago. He has a daughter he had a teenage daughter who was going on a trip with the school, and it was to the Amazon, and she needed to have a parent or that's the word I'm searching for, chaperone. And so the mother said, I got 3 other kids here. I can't go to the Amazon with her. She tells the father, you have to do it. He said, oh, okay. So he goes begrudgingly and he goes to the Amazon with his daughter and all the other kids in their family. And they're going up the Amazon. Little does he realize they're really going up the Amazon. And they stop in these little villages along the place there. And they get off one day, and there's this woman who comes over to them. She says, "You look terribly hot. Would you like a drink?" And he says, "Yes." She gets a bucket and puts it into the Amazon and offers him this dirty water. He looks around, and there's all these people that obviously had disdained stomachs, had problems. And he realized these people don't have any fresh water. And he said he believes that the Lord said to him, "Do something, help these people." So he went home, and he was just so taken by it. He reached out and he realized there's this thing called a Brita filter or something that you can put on the top of a watering can. And when you put the water from the Amazon in the can and you pour it out, it's fresh water. So he had an adaptation of that made, and he's given it out to people now. And he's called it's called his bucket ministry. And he has now brought fresh water to 4 million people around the earth. Can you imagine the impact?
That's an impact.
Of that?
Yeah.
That is an impact. But it all starts because his daughter said, "Dad, come along.
Come on with me." Yeah.
Come with me. So you never know. You might say to somebody, I'm going to Santa Fe, New Mexico, because they have the international hot air balloon races. I did it in Kenya, but now they have them over there. I want to go up in one of those gondolas when the sun comes up in the morning and go over the Crystal Mountains, which I did. And it was beautiful. But you could be saying that to somebody who says to you, "Wow, you just inspired me to really try something different. Get off my couch and do something."
And the nice thing is you can download all the podcasts and listen from anywhere in the world.
anywhere in the world.
That's a great thing about this art form, right? Is that so often people listen to podcasts when they're on the move, and it's kind of a way to encourage people to be out, whether they're out driving or out walking their dogs or whatever, out in the Amazon. And, I think it's something that I think we shouldn't take for granted.
That's right. This is a wonderful medium, and I think I'm very thankful that it's available to so many people. And in your little way, we are part of it. We contribute to it. You're much greater than I do. I just come and host this show and sound off from an 83-year-old brain. It says, shouldn't be even talking here. It's not about you. It's about her, but can't help it. That's the way I do things. So any last comments you'd like to make to anyone? You want to say hi to anybody when you're here?
No, just thanks so much for having me on. I think there's something really nice about having moments to talk about work, but weaving it in with personal questions and hearing a little bit. And, I feel appreciated as a whole person, not just for my resume, but also just for you asking those questions about, what drives me, where I came from. So kudos to you for thinking a little outside the box for how this episode could be done. And I found myself inspired from this. So I'll be taking some of that with me.
Thank you so much. You're a delight, and I'm so happy you joined us tonight. So ladies and gentlemen, I'm going to tell you what I say every time. We all have our own stories. AJ just told you partially hers. You know mine. But you have your story. Tell your story to the people you love. Write it down. Contribute it to an editor in a newspaper. Send it into a television news column. Write it down and share it. Because when it's too late, and all that wisdom is gone. Share it with the world. We need more wisdom in this world. Share it with everyone. And I'm going to give you my last comment, which I do every week. I know you get bored of hearing it, but what do I know? I'm this old guy from Brooklyn. I only know one thing. Get somebody you know today, give them a bear hug. Grab them in a bear hug and tell them you love them. Tell them you love them. They may never have heard that from anyone else. Tell them you love them, and I'm quite sure God does also. And he loves me, and he loves you, and he loves AJ. So you know what I'm going to say right now. AJ, I love you, dear. I love you. Have a wonderful day. Thanks for joining us. Bye-bye, everybody.